Morning. Thank you all very much for joining us. I'm Julie Eklund, Deputy Assistant Commissioner in the Planning and Accountability Division here. I am here with Jenna Cossart, the Program Director in Planning and Accountability, and has responsibility for developmental education reporting, among many things. Also, Doug Parker is here, representing the Education Center, and if we do get off track in terms of the conversation about reporting, he's here to get us back on track. Suzanne Morales-Vale has also joined us. She is the Director of Developmental Education and Adult Basic Education, and she is here in terms of if we have any questions that come up that relate to program. And so we're going to work our way through the PowerPoint that was posted online. I hope you all had access to it, and we will be showing you the PowerPoint throughout the webinar. I had a couple things I want to mention. One is that we expect at a point that we'll have additional changes to reporting, but Doug has not sent out the final official manual changes yet. Basically because if something does emerge from this conversation with all of you, we want to make sure that we're able to accommodate any changes that come up. Most of you are probably aware that we had some rule changes that went through in July, and I'm going to read to college prep courses and math readiness. They are the primary reason that we are making the rule changes, the manual changes that we're talking about today, and we'll go into quite a bit of detail about those rule changes and the manual and the affiliated manual changes. But we also have a couple of other changes that we're going to discuss with you, and so hopefully we'll get through this, and if there are minor tweaks, we'll make them and we'll get the information out to you very soon. And Jana has created actually a very nice document that shows what the prior reporting looked like and what the new reporting looked like. So hopefully that'll be very easy for you to use as you move forward to make these changes. I wanted to mention that I am going to be at TACRO on Tuesday, October 20th, and as part of Doug Parker's presentation, I will talk a little more about these manual changes and be open for questions, because I do realize that as you go in and start making these changes and start thinking about how you need to adjust your student information systems to accommodate for these changes, I do realize that there may be questions and some new issues that emerge. So I will be available then to also discuss this. And we are making a recording of this webinar, and we'll post it online so that if you have colleagues who weren't able to join us, they'll be able to tune in. So what we're going to do is going to go through the manual changes. We had a lot of concerns when I initially sent the changes in August regarding the time frame for the changes. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the time frame. We've got one change that really needs to happen now, and some of the other changes for many institutions will not need to happen until spring reporting. We are going to walk you through a couple of clarifications today related to TSI, because we thought it would be important for you to, just a couple of things that have come up that we want to make sure that you understand. Okay. Again, changes, the clarifications, and I'm going to move right into the change related to the TSI assessment CBE diagnostic levels. Now, this is actually a new item that we are adding to the CBM002. This is going to go at the very end of the CBM002 report. It's going to be item 80 for math, 81 for reading, and 82 for writing. The reason we didn't integrate it into the current system for math, reading, and writing is because we don't have additional positions available in the report, so we would have had to expand the report and moved a lot of the other numbered items down. So we determined that it was going to be easier for everyone to just include these new items at the very end of the report. And again, so the only new items We did take a vote, and institutions, both community colleges and universities, opted for this format for this item. We had a more complex format, but most institutions wanted to go with this one, and this is really the information that is needed at the coordinating board. If your institution wants to find, in terms of collecting data about the actual results of the diagnostic test, that'll be up to your institution to determine how you want to do that. That information, of course, will be important for advising students. But for coordinating board purposes, this is the information that we need. The main reason that we need the information about the TSIA ABE diagnostic level is because we do not get enough information from the score on the TSIA assessment to determine if a student is going to fall in terms of placement for an area into the DE level or the ABE level. Many students, when they take that initial test, because I believe it's 20 questions, the test determines that they're at a certain score that may place them in the ABE level, but then they're sent to this additional ABE diagnostic test. And many students, they score at a level 5 or 6, which places them back in the E level. So what's important for us to get here is where the student stands in terms of level, and so with those two pieces of information, you already are reporting about the TSIA score, that 310 to 390, and this information will get a sense of where the student landed in terms of the test used for initial placement. And we just want the result of that test used for initial placement. That's why the question is phrased this way. The other we don't want you to get confused about it is there's also a DE diagnostic that has various breakouts levels. Is that correct, Suzanne? That's not what this question is about. This is only for those students who are sent into that ABE assessment who are then given a level as a result of that assessment. And we are not applicable, and that's going to be many of your students. You know, the students who don't test at those lowest levels on the TSIA are going to be reported as not applicable. The students who don't even take the TSIA are going to be reported as non-applicable.
So just to clarify, the students who take the TSIA and based on the placement result are directed to the DE diagnostic, they would be reported as 0.
Right, in this item, that's absolutely correct. We will have their score on the TSIA, so we will know they fell into the DE range. We have all the information we need for those students from the score that's reported in item 22.
Okay, one other point of clarification. When the student takes the ABE diagnostic, you will a level 1 to 6 result. As you mentioned earlier, Julie, you will also have information based on strands, and that is based on a 1 to 15 scale.
That's correct.
Not what you're looking for.
That's absolutely right. Now, when we sent out the information saying how much should we collect, we did have a question that asked about those strand scores, and institutions, majority of institutions, both community college and universities, said that we don't want to report that information. We left it as an option because we really don't need that information on the coordinating board side, but we'd have some institutions say to us at Summer TACRO, we'd just rather collect everything at this point in time. But we talked to lots of folks. We don't need it here, so it's up to your institution to decide how you want to handle that information for your local placement purposes. It does not need to be reported to the coordinating board. Thanks, Suzanne. I do want to mention that we have a chat function, I believe. So if you have questions as we move through, please feel free to type those questions in, and we have timed this, and I believe we should have plenty of time at the end for questions. Okay.
Julie, we've got a couple questions.
Oh, wonderful. Okay.
Asking about the presentation. Is it currently available online, or will they be made available?
It is currently available online. Jana, do you want to tell them where they can find it?
Well, in the link in the original email that we sent out with all the instructions for the webinar, there is a link to the presentation materials, and that's probably the easiest way to get there. You can also get to it if you go to the Texas Education Data website, and then you go to the section on reporting manuals. Just click high level category, and you'll see a list of items, and then you'll see reporting changes as one of the.
Right. You go to reporting to THECB on the right-hand side, and I bet almost everyone listening knows what it is because most of you are reporting officials who spend a lot of time on that site. If you go there and then you scroll down, It's and Jan will show you.
Yeah, the link, CBM002 and CBM00S manual changes for fall 20.
There is 1, 2, 3, 4 down on that list. So on reporting to THECB, that dark green end, and then 4 down. And then that is also where we are going to post the changes, the actual official changes, once Doug send them out. As I said, we haven't posted them yet, just in case something comes up in this.
We'll also post the recording there as well.
Okay.
Once we leave this webinar.
Okay. Now I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of the clarifications that we wanted to include. And I will forward.
So the first thing that we're going to clarify is about reporting TSIA writing scores. This is a question that we've received from several folks in the field. And so for the writing portion of the TSIA, this must make either a 5 on the essay or a 4 on the essay, 363, higher on the multiple choice. And the question we've received is, does this have to be done in one sitting, or can institutions mix and match scores across sitting? And the answer is that the institutions can mix and match scores. So if a student could actually take the writing multiple choice and essay on different days or on different sittings, and those scores can be combined. Institutions should use the scores used for placement when reporting to us. Essay or multiple choice scores cannot be combined with earlier assessments. You can only combine scores from the TSIA.
Not that correct, or THEA or Compass. Do not include scores received on those tests.
Okay. The next. So the next slide deals with you need to report interventions on the CBM002. And historically, institutions were asked to report all NCBOs on the 002. But initially, when that was put in, institutions couldn't report. There was no other place to report those NCBOs. And now many institutions are reporting NCBOs on the 00S, and they're getting funding for these. So when intervention is reported on the 00S, institutions do not have to report it on the 002. Okay, they may continue to do so.
Yes, and I recommend if you already have your program set up to report them, it's better to report them if you can, and you've already done that. It's just I have had a couple institutions say it gets complicated to cross with the 2 different reports. We wanted to let you know that as long as you're telling us on the S and we have a means to know that the student was in an intervention, you don't have to tell us in both places if it makes it complicated for reporting for you.
And some of our reports, we actually will check in both places, so it won't make a difference on reporting.
Yes. And one thing for those of you who might be puzzled, we do have a situation where sometimes a school may not have many students in DE. They might be offering an intervention, but they might not want to report it for funding because it's just a small number of students, or it's something that maybe doesn't fit the funding model. For those schools, this is where it's critical that it get reported to us on the 2, so we know that the schools are meeting board guidelines to offer non-course-based options. Because, of course, those courses won't show up on the 004 or the S or in the other places where we collect data about funded DE.
Okay, and the final point of clarification with reporting interventions that actually are implemented and complete before the census date. So typically on the instructions on the 002, institutions are told to report what the student status is as of the census date. But many institutions are now implementing NBOs that are actually complete by the census date. And so in these cases, institutions should report that the student not satisfied TSI by the census date, and that's on the CBM002 items 20, 40, or 60. but this should be reported as having met TSI during the semester, which would be 1 or 3 on the CBM002 item 24 or 1 on the item 44 or 64.
Right. And this actually has to do, some of this has to do with success points. This question came up at a conference that I was at earlier this week. And one institution is to know that if you have a student who comes in and the student tests as not ready, and the student is able, through intervention, to become TSI met, then you want to make sure your institution is able to earn a success point for getting that student ready. But this is only going to apply to students who can, who have already been tested and have not met readiness standards, and then have participated in some kind of organized intervention. Not just we're going to, send you back with the to study some more, but they've participated in intervention. You've determined that they are ready, but maybe it's some kind of NCBO that's intensive in the first week of class, and so it's actually prior to the census date when you're determining they're ready. We wanted you to be able to get credit for that. And we will include information in the instructions to CBM002 about this. When I had to add language to the actual item, it complicated the item so much. We thought it's going to be more straightforward. Just give you that information for that particular type of intervention, because we know some schools are doing that. The one thing I do want to add, and I'm going to quickly go back to that item, the TSIA diagnostic levels. This is an item that need to be programmed in for the fall for CBM002. You should be aware that that report is due in February, but we know you're trying to get programming done because the students have been testing now coming in, and that doesn't give you too much time. But this is the priority, and I'm going to be talking about priorities going through this. This is an item that it won't work to wait for this one. We really would like to get this information in on the fall 2014 CBM002, because this was really the first fall where the TSIA was administered to the majority of your incoming students, or at least those who didn't have exemptions, your first time in college students. So just to say that, and I'll reiterate as we go through and talk about the other items, what the priorities are for reporting, because I said there are some where many institutions won't have to make the programming changes for this fall. But this needs to be made by all of the institutions. Do get this information on your score reports that come back with the TSIA results. So hopefully it'll be a straightforward to program the results of this ABE into your system and set it up for into the CBM002. Now we're going to move on to math readiness, and thank you very much, Jana, for those clarifications. I think will be helpful to institutions, and we have had a lot of questions. Do you want to add something? Oh, thank you. Okay. He's very engaged in conversation. he's learning as we go along. Okay, so we're going to talk about new rules, math readiness, and this is a reason for making changes to manual, because as you know, when we have rule changes that affect reporting, we need to go ahead and adjust our reporting, accommodate those rules in our reporting. Most of you are probably aware of the coordinating board's new negotiated ruling fees, and the fact that for some rules we actually bring in individuals from around the state to participate in a process of discussion and then negotiation of what rule changes will be moving forward, and then those rule changes go out to the Texas Register for general comment. Now, we've always had a situation where general comment, where rule changes are sent for general comment, but now as a result of basically coordinating board sunset bill, for some rule changes, we've been negotiated rulemaking committees, representation from around the state, and we did have a committee that came in to talk about math readiness and also about college prep courses that we'll be discussing in a few minutes. So these changes are changes that were developed by committees. Okay, so on the screen is, I think, the key part about the rule changes related to math readiness. And moving forward now, student readiness in math is going to indicate it is either ready for any entry-level freshman mathematics coursework or ready for non-algebra intensive courses. And that includes Math 13, 32, 42, and 14. 32, 13, 42, and 14, 42. So these are your contemporary math, your statistics quizzes, I believe. And well, earlier in the item that's not underlined for change, as it does say, an institution shall, as soon as practical and feasible, indicate a student's readiness on the transcript of each student. Now, as you know, the coordinating board does not get directly involved in what goes on a student's transcript. So that's going to be up to institutions. But we are going to collect information about student readiness from these different levels so that we have that information and can feed it into our TSI reports, our information about student pathways and student readiness. I'll show you those changes in a minute. We'll continue on. I've got some more information that was changed related to math readiness. This talks about the fact that students have to be informed that if they're in a mathematics pathway model where they are only going to be prepared to take a non-algebra intensive course, that they need to know about that, and they need to understand that if they're going to change their degree path, their degree plan to perhaps something that's STEM where algebra is required, they may be required to do additional developmental education. I think one really important point here, make sure reporting officials understand this, because I think there's a little bit of confusion in the state. This change in terms of having two different types of math readiness, ready for all freshman level coursework versus ready for freshman level coursework that's non-algebra intensive, this change only applies to students who have not met initial readiness standards in math. If someone meets the readiness, the college readiness standard, the TSI standard in math through exemption, our SAT, our high school test, or through taking the TSIA assessment and reaching that standard that's been set by the state, which is right now set at 350. If they reach that, they need to be considered by your institution as ready for all freshman level college coursework and reported to us accordingly. But students who do not meet that standard, it is acceptable for developmental education for that student to be targeted to a pathway that's non-algebra intensive, as well as to have the developmental education targeted towards an algebra intensive. So think about, for example, if you have your intermediate algebra, sort of highest level DE course that prepares students for that college algebra, the course looks somewhat different if you're preparing students for college statistics. Mathways program is the best example of different types of pathways that prepare students for different types of college math. But you will see in these rules, although New Mathways is not just related to New Mathways in terms of these levels of readiness for developmental education. Did we have questions coming in? Or okay, so I think now institutions have had enough time to understand these changes. And then on our final slide with the rule change, and I think the change actually begins on number 6 with the second sentence. For students, again, who are taking the non-standard pathways, its institution is responsible for making sure that those students are informed. So let's go on to the reporting changes, because that's really what we're here to talk about. We have added 2 new items, the CBM002 for 002 related to math, to item number 20. So what we have now is an option 3 and an option 4 that address those students who are considered ready for non-algebraic pathways. We'll only be selecting option 3 or 4, value 3 or 4 on this for students who did not meet the readiness standard coming in initial testing for math, as I said before, and that's a really key point. You will see items 1 and 2. That hasn't changed for students coming in, but we did add for all freshman level math courses so that we could clarify that 1 and 2 are a little different than 3 and 4. And 3 and 4, of course, we've indicated that it's for non-algebra intensive math courses, that the students are considered ready there. Very important for you to know, and you will look at this item and see, yes, we are saying the student is ready. Your institution, if you have a student who has come in who's not ready, and those are the only students who are going to be reported as 3 and 4 on this, if you get them ready for their pathway that's non-algebraic, and you're telling us there are 3 or 4 that they're ready at that level, those students will be included for a success point as long as they started within their TIC within the last 2 years. So very important to know that. And I'm going to pause for a second, see if there are any questions here. I think most reporting officials have seen these items. We've talked about it for a while. But the next one I want to move on to, and I want to thank the folks at Ellucian for this, because I think we included this early and then it dropped off. We want to make sure that we make this change also on item 24. And this is the item that has to do with the reporting where the student stood by the end of the semester. So basically, we wanted to make this item, reflect the changes in 20, so that if you have a student who started not ready but did a non-algebra intensive Pathway DE course and was then determined then to be ready to move into that college stats or contemporary math, you can tell us on 20 they weren't ready at the beginning of the semester, they hadn't met TSI, but then by the end of the semester they had met, but only for those non-algebraic pathways. So I hope that's clear that we have just made these parallel by adding those items, able to move forward and have that information. And the same with this item for the success point. If the student wasn't ready and you checked with a 3 or 4 they got ready during the semester, then this will be eligible for a success point. Now, and I was asked this earlier in the week, if an institution earns a point for a student who wasn't ready and got ready for the non-algebra intensive math, earn additional points if that student then changes their mind, decides to go STEM, you enroll that student in additional DE to get them ready for college algebra, you can't then get another point for that student if they're then reported ready for that pathway. So 1 point for a student for math readiness. I think that's pretty straightforward. And Suzanne, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
Okay, so a student is in a non-algebra intensive pathway, has successfully completed the developmental component.
Right.
For new mathways, that would be the Foundations math course, the Development Foundations math course, and is now getting ready to enroll in a contemporary math course.
Okay.
But, before that, so now enrolled in the contemporary math course.
Yes.
The institution has that student and has transcribed that student as TSI complete for non-algebra intensive path.
That's correct.
Okay. So, before class starts, the student has had an epiphany and wants to be an engineer.
Okay.
So now it's changing to an algebra intensive pathway.
Okay.
The student is fine and understands he or she now will have to do additional development math.
Yeah.
Does that TI designation for non-algebra intensive pathway that has transcripted?
Yes.
Really? Does that go away, or does that stay there until the student successfully completes and it's switched over?
Okay, it actually brings me to the next slide because I think it's important to address that. And I'll answer that, and then when we get to that, I'll talk about it a little more. It is appropriate for an institution to change the status for a student who's gone back and completed additional developmental education that prepares that student for the algebra intensive course, for the college algebra and beyond. It is not appropriate for an institution to go back and change the status for a student who was for, say, contemporary math, and they finish contemporary math, and the institution says, well, in the old days, once they finished math, we would just mark them off as ready for math in all areas. You can leave and you should leave the student status as is, because they're considered ready. You get the points. The student can move on. There's nothing that's going to hold them back from graduation. You should leave their status as what they were ready for when they went into math, unless they have changed and gone into the algebra intensive pathway. Now, when you said they will require additional DE, institutions can make that choice. Universities were concerned in the negotiated rulemaking meeting that they were concerned that if students came to them marked ready overall when they hadn't done the algebra, preparation for those who weren't prepared. They were concerned that they would be going into algebra college courses and wouldn't be ready. So they felt strongly that we should have they should have the ability to put those students in additional DE and to say that they're ready just for the non-algebraic pathways. Certainly, if a student comes to an institution, they did a stats course at the prior institution, the university could decide, right, I'm going to allow this student to take college algebra without additional work because we are comfortable with that. Or the university now, by rule and law, can say, no, that student was not considered ready for algebra intensive. I can require they take DE. So a lot of this is around allowing institutions to say, although the law says once you've met the standard you can't require DE, it's allowing institutions to say, hey, you really haven't had the preparation that we think you need, so therefore we're going to require that you do this additional developmental education. But for reporting, leave them at whatever pathway they took, leave them as met for non-algebraic intensive unless, again, they change the pathway, they do the additional DE, and move forward from there. I hope that makes sense. So here's a couple other points. Let me just sort of talk through these. First one we already discussed. Again, this only applies to students who have not met TSI on entry. For a lot of these scenarios that people have been bringing to us, these are going to be the exception rather than the rule. Most students who are going to do STEM, and many times they've already done calculus in high school, or they've already done pre-calc in high school. These are often students who that's their pathway. Even if they aren't ready, they know that's where they want to go and that's where they choose to go. But you do have students who change their mind. So just remember that it's going to be much less common to have a student change their mind and go all the way through one pathway and then say, no, never mind, I really wanted to do STEM. I didn't want to be a theology major, or whatever the case may be. For students who transfer, you have someone who starts with you who transfers to a university that requires college algebra. This could come up in that scenario where then, of course, the university can say you need additional DE. But for most students, they're going to be in a pathway to do the Dev Ed and the college math at the same institution. And the next point has to continue on. We've already about this. Institutions shouldn't change the MET status. Success points will be awarded for students as long as they're considered MET for whatever pathway, and as long as they were FTIC within 2 prior years. And it's also important to note that those who have done the alternative pathways and taken perhaps temporary math or statistics, they should be reported for taking a first college level course for that math, and points will be awarded. So the success points for first college level course are not just for college algebra, and I think everybody's pretty clear about that. Good take a plug that we do have those first college level course guidelines available in Appendix Q of our reporting manuals. Okay, talk about timeline. And you'll all be happy to know this math readiness is the most complicated of all of these changes. But what I wanted to point here is that most institutions were not offering these pathways for non-algebra intensive courses last year through something like a new Mathways model. Or if you were offering them, you already reported the student readiness after fall using our existing system. You don't need to worry about going back and changing status for those students. The rule change came through this summer and it was effective as of this summer. So if you're doing this yet and you're just starting this fall, for example, you will not have to report those students as ready for non-algebraic pathway until your spring 002 report. And if you aren't able to capture that in item 24, hey, they got ready during the semester, that's okay if you want to leave your existing reporting. But what you can then do, just tell us the student wasn't ready at the beginning and the end, make your program changes, and then for the spring CBM002 that you're reporting to us, tell us by census date that student was considered ready for non-algebraic pathways. So it will be possible for institutions to delay this programming change if they either were not doing these pathways last year, or if they this fall, or if they were doing them this fall, but they want to wait till spring. Now, normally the best way to do it would be the student started and they weren't ready, and then tell us on item 24, yes, the student met during the semester for non-algebraic pathways. But either is fine, especially for this year. We pick up both in all of our reporting, so, and certainly for our success points. So feel free to wait a semester. The only students you may lose is if someone drops and leaves your institution. So if someone comes in by the end of the semester, you get them ready for math, for non-algebra intensive pathways, or for algebra intensive. You don't tell us by the end of the semester. If you wait till the beginning of next semester, the student doesn't show up, so don't report the student on a 2 for the next semester. You would lose that student, the status of student changing from not ready to ready. That's only problem with not making this change right now, but I think it's important to know. We have a question come in. Okay, well, why don't we? And I think we're pretty much done for math, and I've walked you through these changes. They are written out in the slide, but go ahead and let's have the questions for math now.
One of the first is if they need exemptions for math by ACT, SAT, etc., but don't take college algebra, will we mark TSI complete? Yes,
you absolutely will. Anyone with an exemption or who's met the TSIA math readiness standard, they are ready for all freshman level math courses, and you will report them as you have always done on the same items you've always used.
Okay, the next, do you have to have a non-algebra intensive math pathway by spring of 2015?
No requirement at all that you have a non-algebra. That's an excellent question. There's no requirement at all that your institution do this. Your institution could decide that we are not interested in having that kind of pathway. We want all our students to be ready to go into college algebra, and so therefore you don't have to make any reporting changes whatsoever. I wouldn't make the decision based on not having to make reporting changes. And for reporting officials, I wouldn't be surprised if someone at some point comes to talk with you about this rule change and what it might mean. But yes, if your institution chooses not to do that, there is no requirement that it be done.
I just want to add, as Julie has already emphasized, if your institution is involved in New Mathways project, then you are involved in a non-algebra intensive pathway. So all of these rule changes and so forth will apply to your institution.
Another question relating to the earlier ABE. Do we have to go back and enter the ABE scores for currently enrolled students?
Will come down to how your student information system works. You have to report them to us on the CBM002 that's going to be submitted in February. Those who end up taking that ABE assessment. Therefore, requires some programming to pull that into what gets reported to us in February. And I apologize that coming at this late point in time, realize that there was this second component to the test. You know, initially I said to many of you that we won't have any new items related to the TIA assessment. We did not realize that when students are going to be taking that ABE assessment, some of them actually would fall back into DE ranges, and many of them. And so we know that you want us to know that, hey, these students aren't really ABE, they're really DE. We want to know that, and so we decided it was really critical that we collect that information. So we need to go back and do that, but you have this, you should have the score reports from the board. I would like to call Josie Brunner on our staff. We have some people on our staff that are getting pretty familiar with how those, how those scores are reported, and they could walk you through, yes, here you find that element that you need to grab and feed into your student information system.
But it would be for students who are testing for assessment for fall 14, not for...
Yes, students who tested for this fall. You need to do it any time earlier. So if you had a student who was testing on the TSIA last spring, don't expect you to go back and redo what you've already submitted to us. This is, or you're going to be submitting for summer, which hasn't come in yet. This is just beginning this fall. This change is just for beginning this fall. Good question. Anything else?
What instructor qualifications for the ABE math pathway?
Okay, we're not here to talk about instructor qualifications, but Suzanne is here, so maybe you want to talk about the next time you're doing training.
Again, as I mentioned earlier, the main initiative focusing on non-algebra intensive pathways is New Pathways Project. So we recommend go straight to the source, contact the Dana Center, contact Colonnane, anyone else in the New Pathways Project, and they can tell you directly what changes, if any, are required in terms of faculty qualifications.
Okay, math, and we'll have time at the end. I think also we're on track here. If you think of additional questions, and I will be out at TACRO with Doug in October if new things rise. All right, let's move on to college prep courses. We also had negotiated rulemaking related to college prep courses, and the reason that happened is because House Bill 5, which was passed during the 83rd legislative session, includes language that allows schools to offer college prep courses that have been designed in collaboration with community colleges that a student who completes that course is considered TSI met at an institution where the student took the course. And part of that, and a lot about House Bill 5, and we're really not here to talk about the development of the college prep courses. And the language in House Bill 5, it's very much a local initiative. It's local universities and community colleges working with local ISDs, but there is part of the statute that involved the Commissioner of Higher Education and gave the Commissioner the ability to determine where these prep courses would apply on institutions that collaborated with the ISD on the course. And the negotiated rulemaking is really all about, okay, well, what should those rules be? So the Commissioner, I think, determined it's important to hear feedback from institutions about this and what they'd like to do. And as we go through, you'll see how that was how resolved and how the rules are written in terms of where these college prep courses do apply.
Julie, if I had something real quick too, something that has come up times for institutions of higher ed. House Bill 5 clearly states that the requirement is on the school district to contact the institution of higher ed, the community college, the community technical college, or the university, not the other way around. So it's not your responsibility as an institution of higher ed to find school districts to partner with. It's the other way around. The outreach has to be done on the part of the school district contacting you all. If you have been contacted by a school district, then you are not involved in this.
Okay. We're going to move on here to talk a little bit about the rule changes. And the rules themselves clearly say that college prep courses are not developmental education courses in the ACGM. I stress this because someone at a meeting I was at earlier this week said, oh, we're developing our 0304 or whatever it was as the college prep course. It's important to understand this is not taking your current DE, bringing it to school, getting funding for it, reporting it as DE, DE not be funded at a high school. This is really developing a prep course, and it might be relying on your expertise, and it probably is relying on the expertise of your faculty, including your DE faculty, in terms of developing the courses. But these are not DE courses in high school, and we want to make sure people don't refer to them that way. They're college prep courses. Suzanne had something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, based on, again, feedback from the field, notwithstanding what Julie just said, but many institutions of higher ed are using as a guide point the curriculum in especially their highest level developmental ed courses, and they certainly can do that when it comes to just the curriculum component. But as Julie emphasized, it still is not considered a developmental ed course.
Yeah, I actually believe that in this session that's probably what they meant, but I would be careful about calling that saying we're offering this course with a DE rubric from the ACGM to the high school. Okay. If we second point, the course was developed through an MOU, and Suzanne talked a little bit more about that, and they're not eligible for state funding. These are high school courses for students. Next slide. Important. This is sort of the important piece for the reporting officials. This is in the exemptions, exceptions, and waivers section in the TSI rules. A student who completes a college prep course is exempt for a period of 12 months. I'm sorry, it is the TSI?
No, successfully complete.
A student who successfully completes, important, a prep course is for a period of 12 months from the date of high school graduation with respect to the content area of the course. So that really has to do with it related to math, reading, or writing readiness. And many of these courses are for reading and writing and
ELA.
For ELA, yeah. Now, the exemption applies only at the institution that partnered with the school district in which the student is enrolled. But an institution of higher education may enter into a memorandum of understanding, an MOU, with partnering institution and accept that exemption. And that's an important point as we move into how all of this is going to be reported. So basically, if a student does a college prep course, if they successfully complete it, and it's my understanding that the colleges have been very involved in what does successful complete mean, because these students are going to be coming to your college and be considered TSI met in that area. But if they do successfully complete it, then for your college, they're considered ready, not for the entire state. So then we had to do a little bit of thinking in terms of how we're going to have this reported. So let me walk you through what we've done. Many of you have seen these, proposed items that we've out. Let me walk you through it. If you do see a problem or have questions, now is the time to let us know. And these are going to apply math, reading, and writing across the board. Earlier we were just talking about changes to readiness for math-intensive or non-intensive courses. These are going to apply for math, reading, writing. We've just written out one item to keep the PowerPoint shorter. So in the 002, we have a section about waivers and exemptions where we get specific information if we're told the student has a waiver or an exemption. Yes, we have a question? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Here we go. That would be helpful to you. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to add an A and a B at the bottom. And it's going to be a 9 and a 10 because we do have two positions for this item, and we do not want to shift positions over. So B is not some kind of special code related to college prep course waivers. It's just we rent space. We're going to call it A and B. And A is going to be the waiver for students who did a course developed with your institution. Okay, and the B is going to cover the second part of the rule that we were just looking at. That's going to be if you are saying we're going to give this student, we're going to allow this student into the college level course because we are going to accept that was developed by another institution that the student took at ISD. So let me give you an example. This happen more often in regions. So say a student does a college, say Houston Community College and Houston ISD work together to develop a college prep course. They partner on that, they collaborate on that, and then say our college says, well, we to all the students who have completed that prep course because we looked very carefully at what the course was all about and what was required for successful completion, and we've decided that if a student from Houston ISD has done that course at Houston ISD and they've successfully completed it, that we will also consider them ready to enter the level freshman courses when they've done that. That student, when they go up at Lone Star, they're going to be reported by Lone Star as a B under the waiver. They have a waiver to do the college prep course that was developed through Houston College and HISD. So that's clear. An institution is in no way obligated to sign MOUs with other institutions. It's completely up to your institution. Universities are no way obligated to work with local community colleges. Colleges in a region aren't obligated, but you could also have community colleges or universities that are in very different regions who do decide to agree to do this. So again, up to institutions, but this is our mechanism for reporting it in terms of the waiver. Okay. Here is where we get into, and for those of you who've been working with the two for a long time, this should be very clear, but those who are new, I make sure we talk about what waiver means for reporting purposes on the two versus what an exemption or a waiver means in terms of our rules related to TSI. Now, we have all along had some unusual situations, unusual, but we have circumstances in terms of our exemptions in the law and in the rules for the Texas Success Initiative allow students to enroll in program or in college level coursework if they have not met TSI. But in some of those situations, a student is not considered met across the board, they're always ready, they're good to go. It'll be based on just certain circumstances around that student at a given point in time, they are considered ready. Classic example is a Level 1 certificate student. A Level 1 certificate student is exempt from TSI while they're a Level 1 certificate student. But once they change their mind and say, oh, I want to earn an associate's degree, that student has to meet TSI. That student's status changes. For reporting purposes, we did not use the term exemption across the board because we had situations where student status changed, and we wanted exemption for reporting purposes only to mean that student has always met, they're good to go, like the SAT, ACT exemption, once they enroll with you, they're good to go. They're only good for 5 years if they don't enroll, but once they're enrolled and they're ready and they're moving forward, they have to meet TSI again. They're reported to us as ready. That's true for a Level 1 certificate. It's true for someone who's currently in the military, because that student is dishonorably discharged. That student has to then meet TSI. So that's why we have a waiver, Level 1 certs, and we have a waiver for military. Now, we have a new situation with this college prep course, because the student, it has to do with where the student's considered ready, not if they're considered ready for all time. A student is considered ready at the institution that partnered to create this course, or if there's an MOU with the institution that partnered to create this course. But then is not considered ready anywhere else. If they decide, no, I'm going to go to this university that doesn't honor that college prep course waiver and didn't develop that course, that student is not ready. We didn't want to set up reporting where institutions would tell us, yes, they're ready, they're good to go. So we're going to have you report students who in those prep courses to 0. Not satisfied or obligation is waived. And then you're going to tell us on the item we just looked at before that here's the waiver. So we will know they're in a college prep course and you're going to move them into the college level material. An institution can then decide for the student if they're once they successfully complete that college level work, that they are considered ready and can report them as such. So I just wanted to make sure people understand why we're using the term waiver. This is going to continue on in terms of item 24, just to be parallel with item 20, 40, 60. We're going to, and did I do 20? Item 20 is not satisfied, and then again, if they have this waiver, it's not satisfied at the end of the semester, again, unless they have successfully completed the college level coursework, and you're determining by looking at the transcript, as just like you do the transfer, yes, this person's college ready. So that'll be up to your institution to decide. Okay, the timeline for this waiver is available for this fall. I have several people in the state, and this is where we'll see if you're all awake. I want you to jump in. Did anyone out there listening a college prep course last year at a high school where students have enrolled with you this fall? Is there anybody at all out there who has done that? I'm going to unmute. You want to jump in? We'll just quickly and you should write it in, or we'll have a lot of noise. Tell you what, go ahead and write in if anyone has done that. We'll just rely on that for now. We will open up the microphones later, but there are a lot of you listening. Have we one right back? No. We have silence here. That was my sense in terms of, I talked to several people at places that I knew were working to develop these courses. They hadn't started yet. Well, here's the great news then. No one has to make a programming change for that for this fall, for the 002, because you're not going to have any students who came to you this fall. That change can wait until next spring. And you're probably going to have anyone who's, taking a course this fall and then graduating in the winter, then coming to you in the spring. So this probably realistically is something that you're going to be reporting to us on the fall 15 CBM002. Okay, so, did someone?
Well, there's one question about the math that we need to go back to.
Okay, and I probably guess what it is. Okay, so I think that's it for the college prep course waiver. I hope that's clear. And I know P16 is going to be providing professional development related to those college prep courses. Anna, you want to go ahead and?
This is the question that we've got several versions of.
Okay.
Is that we currently use a code that shows if a student was CSI complete from another institution. Do we need another code to show that the student at this institution was deemed complete on algebraic pathway?
Okay.
Basically, how are institutions going to know?
Okay, so and I'm wondering if that's one of the vendors sending that question in terms of, obviously it's someone who's going to be doing programming. And we've talked about this. We have different information systems out there that require different type of programming. So there's a couple things you need to keep in mind. But I would think the answer for that is going to be yes, because you have to report it to us if they're ready for math or just ready for non-algebra intensive math. As in the rules that it needs to be on a student's transcript. So you're going to have to find some way, I think, to get it into your system. So if Bill takes a course at your community college, he comes in, he's not ready, he goes for a non-algebra intensive pathway, he's successful, then he decides, I'm going to transfer down the street to the local university. When that university has to know, well, he's only ready for non-algebra intensive path. So there needs to be some way in a system to a student if a student is ready for one or the other, ready for all math or ready for everything but non-intensive. Because it will be the trigger for the university that says, by law, you're allowed to require DE for that student. You require them for the students who are ready for all areas, but you can require it for that student because they haven't received the support they need to go and do college algebra. Institutions reporting, you're going to have to sit down, I think, and figure this out. And we've also talked about that people who work on transcripts and, the Speedy group and all of that, if any of you involved in that listening, this is going to be an important conversation for you to have. Feel free to call on me as a resource or folks in our P16 division as a resource when you talk about transcripts. But again, that's not the co-board's area of responsibility, but it is in the rules. Suzanne?
Yeah, I have a question. So a receiving institution, the student transferring in, they're marked as TSI complete.
For every
math.
For all math.
Right. Well, it just says TSI complete math, or however they designate it.
Well, they need to say it some way so that the institution will know.
Right. So my question is, in other words, they're not really going to change their programming or anything because they don't do the university, receiving university or community college does do a pathway model. So this really doesn't apply to them. So they're going to continue to just say TSI complete math.
You mean the original one doesn't do a pathway model. If you are doing a pathway model, you have to put it on your transcript so the receiving institution will see that and say, even though we don't do a pathway model, the student coming to us is not ready for our required college algebra, so we can put them in DE. Does that make sense?
Well, I'm asking for an institution that is not involved in a pathway model.
They should probably change their transcript in case a student transfers from there, so the receiving institution from there will know and have those. We consider everybody ready for all courses, maybe some language. This might be for the folks who work with transcripts to talk about the Speedy group or the other groups. They change their language just so they didn't just ignore all of this and not change their transcript, but that they knew that, hey, this is all we do is ready for college or other algebra intensive. So when we say ready, it means all freshman coursework. So whether that's a notation or something.
Or maybe it's adding in the all. TSI all math or ready all.
Ready all. And again, I think that's a very good point. Those are the conversations that I think need to be those folks who work with transcripts need to be having. But we don't want to dictate to you how to do that, but you are going to have to collect it to report it to us, so it will be in your system in some way. So hopefully there's a way to make it work, and I encourage folks to share ideas. Is there another question?
Oh, no.
Oh, okay. Thanks very much for all of the good questions.
Okay, are the non-algebra math courses in 1332, 1342, and 1442?
Yes. Yeah, and that's in the rules. Those three courses are actually in the rules. If you have something else, or if you're a university, you know, we looked at these courses from ACGM, and Suzanne, that's statistics, and is it contemporary math? Is that, yes. But if you're a university, you might not have those designations, so you want to look for comparable courses, or if you have any freshman level math courses that don't have a prerequisite except TSI, you can look at those courses and say, yeah, this would be fine for a student who did an algebra intensive pathway, whereas this course wouldn't be. So, you know, if you have some kind of business math that's algebra based, you might say, that course we want students to have done full, they were, you know, tested DE, we want to make sure they were ready all the way to the sort of pre-algebra, you know, ready to go into college algebra point. Or if not, you might decide, no, we're happy to take students who are prepared for college statistics. The other I want to point out, and I know Jenna Lane, who may be listening, has talked about this, but it's not to see this as a lesser preparation for students who are going to go on a different pathway. I think thinking about it as it's a different kind of preparation. I mean, many of you who are reporting officials, IR folks, work with statistics, know that it can be pretty complex stuff. And new mathways, when students are on a pathway to do statistics, they have a robust developmental education preparation for those students. It's just more focused towards getting them ready for the college statistics course, not for the college algebra course. So I wouldn't see this as, we can just drop the last course and we'll be good to go. I would really think about this as, what do students need to be doing in those developmental education courses to prepare them for the pathway that they're choosing, because they're much more likely to be successful there, and you're more likely to earn points from them, and they're more likely to stay and move through if that DE preparation is tailored towards what they need to be successful in the math course they're going in. If if it's a level 2 certificate student who's required to meet TSI, think about, right, what will be required, where will they need to be successful in that level 2 certificate. So there's a lot to think about. It doesn't mean, you know, complete overhaul of everything you've done. I think it could mean tweaking. For some institutions, it could mean an overhaul. You know, I'm not a primary expert, but I know that that's something that has been stressed when I've been at meetings about these college, the math developmental pathways.
And so we've got the question, so a university can require written off for all math.
Okay, Dan's going to answer that.
If students' degree plan at university does not include an algebra intensive math course, and is CSI complete for a non-algebra intensive pathway based on the program from the community college or another institution where they're transferring from, that university must honor that exemption. The only time the UD can say, oh no, we need to have you ready for all math, is if the student switches majors, and of course this is based on your requirements at your university, and the algebra intensive course is now required for that student's major at your university.
Yeah. And that clarification, because the example I was giving with the business math really was, you know, if it requires that algebra preparation and the math will have the algebra in it. One thing I want to say for those university people listening, and I think this is very important to mention for TSI, is, you know, it's very confusing for students in the past when they would be told, hey, you're ready to go. You know, you're in high school, you've met exemption standards, you've met standards, and now, you know, you can move forward into college and college level coursework. And then the student would arrive and be told, really not ready to go. That's really not the case. We want to have a consistent message, and even for these students who aren't ready, who do qualify for some developmental education, I think it's important that if the message is you're being prepared for non-algebraic pathways, that's the message. Does that make sense, Suzanne? Okay. Is there a question that,
Yeah, this relates to Math 1324, and I believe that is the business math. And it says it was included with Math 1314 in the new TSI exemption language.
okay,
That was based on the fact that in the ACGM, Math 1324 did not have a required prerequisite. So it was considered an entry-level course, an entry-level math course, just like Math 1314, Math 1332, and 1342.
but consider that business math for non-algebra, that would be up to an institution for that one, whether it's a non-algebraic intensive pathway or not. It is a freshman level course.
It's Business Math 1324
Yes.
as described in the ACGM. If you have another business math course that has another designation and falls under one of
This would be university, yeah.
yeah, then that's fine. But if your business math is equivalent to Math 1324, it is considered an entry-level math course just like 1314 and 1332 and 1342, and with math prerequisite required.
Right, but I think what we will make clear, I want to make sure I understand, Suzanne, with this one, I'm looking back for the language in the rules where they actually mention the math courses, so let me find that slide. Okay, so 1314, 1324, and 1414 are listed with the algebra intensive. Is that correct? Right, so I'll go back to the slide where we have that in the rules. Am I going backward here? Okay. May choose to require additional coursework for algebra-intensive courses, and that includes the 1324. Okay, so the important thing to point out here is that's considered a course. That CGM course is here as one of those courses where algebra-intensive DE can be required. But later on, we have courses, so this is your college algebra and your business, but then later on we do mention, I believe the rules do mention, yes. So here we go on 4.59, it's earlier in the slide, but it's later in the rules. We talk about the non-intensive, and these are 1332, 1342, and 14. 1332, 1332, and 1442.
It's a different number. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right. So what?
So there is a discrepancy, and we're going to need.
No, there's not. There's not a discrepancy. Yeah. So I think Suzanne, right. So the courses that are non-algebraic intensive at ACGM are listed here in the rules. Okay. And later on, the courses that can be used for the algebra intensive, these are the ones where you can require the algebra intensive. These are listed here. So they are different courses. Okay. And that's Suzanne.
I just think we set earlier the wrong number.
Oh, did we put a wrong number out there?
Well, it was a question, I think.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize if we provided the wrong number. My point was in talking to universities is you're going to have different numbers for these courses. So, again, and you have different courses. So if you have a business math course, clearly here, it says if 1324 is business math, I'm sorry, I should have brought the ACGM down with me. I don't know, maybe someone could pull up the math courses in the ACGM. So 1324 in the ACGM is considered a course for which algebra-intensive pathway is appropriate, but then I believe the others are statistics and contemporary math. And that's, again, let's see, later, that's in the rules here for the non-algebra intensive. And I think that's one of the reasons why they wanted to put courses actually in the rules. It's kind of unusual to mention examples in the rules, but I think that was done so that there isn't confusion about what the intention was. Universities, you might not use the common course numbering system and might have different numbers. Okay, so I think we're good with that. Is everyone clear on that? If you still have questions, comment, but we want to move forward because we want to have time. We're through most of this now, but the final piece I want to talk about, and this is coming to the pike for later, so let's move forward. I believe we were finished with the prep courses. Here's the final change that we want to talk about, and this is a change that does not apply for this fall. You don't have to do anything related to programming for this fall. And to reiterate, just so everyone's clear, For this fall, the only thing that has to be done for all institutions is the ABE levels. The thing that may have to be done for your institutions is the math pathways, but it probably doesn't. And then in terms of the college prep courses, no one has done them yet, so that doesn't have to happen this fall. But this change would need to happen for the spring CBM002, which is due in June. Okay. I'm nodding, so I got this. I don't want to say 1st or 15th because I don't always have that in my memory, but sometime in June. Okay, so here's the existing item, what you'll be reporting with this fall. Now, we did have people say to us, well, if we're going to go in and make programming changes, we just want to do it. If you want to make these changes, you can. This is the only change we're going to talk about to the S. Everything else we're talking about was to the CBM002, but it does relate to developmental education. So we wanted to bring it to you and give plenty of time to make this change, because this one may be a little more complicated. Okay, so right now you tell us developmental level, and Jana, were you going to, I think Jana's going to jump in here and talk through the changes. I've got her name here, so why don't you take it from here?
So these changes all relate to the field developmental education type, which prior to fall has collected both information on the type and level. So institutions reported whether a particular implementation of DevEd was a course or an intervention, and whether it was at the lowest, medium, or high level. And historically, we've gotten this field. So we would get things that we knew were courses reported as interventions, or vice versa, or reported as not dead.
The other thing we got is if you called your lowest level a 1 and went up and your highest level was a 3 or a 6, and we call our highest level a 1 here, we courses report as highest level, where we looked at your rubric and said, no, this is low level. So that's another example of why we don't have a lot of confidence right now in the data we've collected on this.
And most importantly, I think this does not reflect our new acceleration emphasis, because it implies that there should be, or that it's acceptable to have 3 levels, and that certainly isn't the case.
Thank you.
So going forward, to look at what we're going to require in spring 2015, and then go back and look at how fall 14 is going to work as a phase-in. So in spring 2015, there'll be just 5 choices: not developmental ed, and a classification. 1 would be a developmental course, 4 would be a developmental intervention, and that would be just the regular NCBOs, or a self-paced course or intervention, or a co-requisite or paired course. Okay, and we realize that some interventions can fall in multiple categories, and we'll talk about that in a second. And going on to fall 14, we're going to allow institutions to report either as they've always done, or as they're going to report going forward in spring 2015. So we've simply added the items 7 and 8 here, and so you've got flexibility in how you want to choose to report this.
Okay. I just quickly mention, I want to mention 2 things related. One, and this came up, I hope now it's clear why we have skipped numbers, because we're going to have this phase transition if you want to report, and also because in our system, we didn't suddenly make number 2 a self-paced course when it used to be DevEd level, because someone working in data files is going to see a coding, and they might be aggregating several years of data, and then they'll have to do a much more complicated programming to do that. So some of that was for our ease of use in terms of our files. So we kind of retired 2, 3, and 5 of 6, or we will retire them moving forward. The other thing I wanted to say is that, and I'm seeing this, and this is interesting because maybe somebody else has picked up on this, I think we need just a little bit of language after 0, and this may be the one change we come out with after this session, and we'll see what other comments come in, to indicate that it could report something that's not a DE course or intervention in this item if it is the college level course that is being paired with the intervention. And then be just for an 8. So I think we had some language at one point for that, and whether we put it in the instructions or put it here, and the more I look at it, I think we should put it here. We had,
It says so, use this option for both sections of the
Right.
prerequisite course.
but we have it under 0 so people don't program and automatically say, oh, everything that's not DE will automatically say 0, which is what we've had in the past. Just a little note maybe, Jana, that says, except if it's the college level part of a paired course. So I think maybe we'll add a little something like that, if folks think that would be helpful. And then what I wanted to say is, this is where it's going to be a programming change when you do decide to do it, that we have so much interest even nationally about these paired courses. There's a lot of people who are doing it. I was at a Complete College America data meeting, and that's a group that we submit aggregated data to from all of our institutions. They were very interested in data about this item and talking to states about, hey, we really want to be able to track this. This is data we'd like to be able to see. I also want to mention that Suzanne's group is required in some legislative reports to talk about how we're doing with interventions and changes. So legislatively, we really need this information about what people are doing. We tried to keep it simple. We've got the depth survey, the DE survey, and other places where we can get details. We didn't want to have 30 different options for what you're doing for interventions and NCBOs, but we did, with this change, want to get the basics down, and because of all the interest in paired courses, we make sure we had that as an option and could find the data for the paired course. So if you tell us this is a paired English 1301 with a DE English course, and if you put the 8 there, we go into the CBM002S. And okay, here's an 8. This is the 1301 course that's being reported to that student. We can see the grade. So be able to say, hey, those students who were in paired courses who hadn't met TSI, how are they actually performing in that college level course? And it's really hard for us to do now because we have to guess at the pairing. We have to say, well, they're in English 13.1 and they're in this DE section, so I bet that's the pairing so we can get information about how they're doing. We don't have to make that assumption. We want to know from you, this course that I'm reporting right here, maybe it's this college algebra course I'm reporting right here, this is part of a paired course. So if we see 8 in this item, we know immediately if it's affiliated with a college level course that that's a paired course. So it's really going to be a wonderful item for us to have, and I do want to be a cheerleader for providing opportunities for everyone in the state to be able to see how these interventions are working. These changes aren't just to make things complicated for reporting officials. They can really make a big difference in terms of policy and practice, and we just think this is a core piece of information that's going to help us in the understanding if interventions are working. So again, we really appreciate that.
There is one more point that we need to make about this item. So,
okay, I need to go. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Okay. Yes. Thank you.
So this is the prioritization, because we realize that some of these a particular DevEd implementation could fall in multiple categories. So if something is a co-requisite model or a paired course, report that. Don't report it as something else. Otherwise, if it's a self-paced course or intervention, report it as such. Or then if it's an intervention, report it. And then it would be simply a DevEd course, which is the traditional DevEd.
Oh, just a quick question, Jan. So a student English 1301 and co-enrolled in a developmental education intervention that is an NCBO, both should be reported as 8.
Yes.
Okay, so number 4 should be reserved for standalone NCBOs that are not paired.
Absolutely. You've got it.
Okay, and another question, a lot of NCBOs are self-paced because they're in a modular format, especially with math. So a modular math NCBO should be reported as a 7.
Yes.
Good.
We have one other question, clarification. If we're requesting funding and not reporting an intervention on the F, this would not apply, and that is true. If you are not reporting an intervention for funding, you would not have to report the type. However, you would need to report that you bring an NCBO on the 002 in that case.
Yes, there was no S record for something that's not funded. The call had excellent questions today. Thank you. Okay. what I'm thinking is we've got some additional slides that, just some other information that might be of interest. Oh, I'm sorry, TSI and level 1. So, oh, yes, this one I do want to, talk about the fact that, I'm sorry, I hit something on my computer. I did not just enter Grand Canyon. Those technical difficulties. Just a couple I want to mention. Maybe, Jana, we can just go through these last slides very quickly, but do be thinking about and sending in your questions, and I'm happy to stay a little over. We will finish at 11, but for anyone who still has questions, I am free and will be happy to stay and answer any additional questions. I'm going to cover this one, or I guess I was going to. Level 1 certificate students are exempt from TSI, and we have had some questions about that. I just very generally wanted to make people aware that our workforce and academic affairs area, they're working on updates to the GIPWE manual that will affect that, so we've had a lot of questions about, well, they're on a level 1 certificate, but they need to meet TSI, but now that's not exempted. We can't give them, we can't in a prerequisite for TSI. How do those things work? So there are things happening, conversations around that, and do get in touch with our workforce and academic affairs folks if you have questions come up on that. Jenna, do you want to really talk about holistic advising?
Holistic advising, and we've gone through these at other places, but the main point is that a student does not meet TSI requirements coming in. You place a student directly into college courses through advising without providing at least some type of developmental education. Now, it may be minimal, and it could be an NCBO reported only on the 2, not reported for funding, but you do need to provide some type of support for that student. Then just to note that we do have the ESOL waiver that went into effect this year. And the waivers for students with minimal English language skills. I think so. If you have questions about that or need more information, you can just contact us. Reporting the TSI assessment, beginning in spring, college students who have not met the exemption standards, beginning in spring of 2014, this will be the only assessment allowed for initial TSI testing.
Right, it's because we had people saying, well, what if someone took an AccuPlacer last year or, 18 months ago? Now, moving forward, everyone, I hope, is clear that they have to be administered the TSIA assessment. If someone took an AccuPlacer and enrolled and they were moving forward, that's different. But for someone who enrolled, can't take an old test result maybe that they took while in high school. And then this is just some things about Flex. So I think these are self-explanatory. I already mentioned the first college level core guidelines. So are there any options now that are coming in? I'm going to open it up, and it's probably going to be really noisy. So if we do have any other questions, does someone want to read them to me?
Grace asked a question a moment ago. Just wants to clarify that university equivalent of staff is considered non-algebraic, and it's a university equivalent of 1342 as described in the ACGM would be considered a non-algebra intensive course.
That's my understanding.
So if you have, we understand some universities don't even offer that first statistics course. And if you have a statistics course at your university is not the equivalent of 1342, it's something else, maybe a sophomore level course, then you can make it whatever you want to. The one that is not intensive is the 1342 equivalent.
Okay. Great. What else do we have?
going prep courses, if the student comes to us with a college prep course and under another college's MOU, do we need an MOU?
No.
Oh, okay, I just want to clarify, when we talk about college prep courses, there are two MOUs that we potentially talk about. The first one is mandatory, and that is between the school district and the partnering institution of higher ed, and that defines the course, the curriculum, what successful completion means, and so forth. The second MOU is separate and is optional, and that is between institutions of higher education. That does not involve the school district. That's only in between institutions of higher ed, and it's optional. It's between those two institutions that choose to honor each other's exemption.
Right. It might not even be each other's. It might be one saying, I'll honor yours. We're not going to develop a course, but we'll honor your exemption. So this doesn't have to do with students. If a student comes to you and says, I took a college prep course at XYZ Community College, if it wasn't your community college and you don't have an MOU, you can tell that student, no, we don't honor that. You're not considered ready. And I hope that that information is made very clear to the students enrolled in those courses. And those who are developing these college prep courses, you might want to build that in, just something to make sure that the students know, especially if they're not going to go to that local community college, if they're planning to go to, the university on the other side of the state, make sure they check with that university, because if they don't honor it, they can't show up and say, hey, I took a college prep course even though I didn't meet the standard on the TSIA assessment.
And remember, the exemption is good only 1 year from the date of graduation, regardless.
Yes, that's an important point. Okay. Question.
If scores from another institution for the past CHS, can the current institution report those?
Well, the works is we've got a previously reported option on those items for reporting scores. Once we get the scores reported, if a student was somewhere else, that institution would have reported them to us. Except, for example, if it was a level 1 certificate student that was waived, who wouldn't have scores. But that student had to be TSI liable coming in for the program they were in. Their initial institution will have reported it to us, and as long as we're aware of that, you can just tell us pre-reported. Now, if you're not sure about that, get the information from the student about the scores. But generally, we don't want to make it challenging for students to have to go back in time and dig up scores for institutions. Came in on their transcript from that institution that they had met. You don't have to know the score. Just tell us already met, previously reported as determined by another institution. And we have an item that says exactly that. So it's pretty straightforward. That hasn't changed how that works.
Okay. Student transfers in from out of state and has a statistics as their only math course. How would it come in terms of TSI?
You folks it's up to your institution to do the evaluation of transcripts for students coming from not only out of state, but students coming from Texas independent institutions or maybe career colleges, the University of Phoenix, those types of places. That's left up to you to make the determination of readiness. So I think you need to sit down probably with the folks at your institution and say, is this student considered ready for all college level math, and is this student, obviously for reading and writing, are they considered ready? That's actually a very good point to raise, because that's something that, you probably want to have some conversation about in terms of what it's for a student coming in. But I believe that the coordinating board is going to dictate that for institutions. But I will raise that with here, and if there is a different answer, I'll make sure to get out to you. But that's how it reads. You have the ability to make the determination looking at transcripts. Okay.
So a university that would be meeting with the school district to develop the college prep course.
That's good for Suzanne. The prep course in HB5, is it just talk about community college? Because I may have provided misinformation. Does it talk about community colleges partnering, or it could be a university partnering?
Institution of higher education.
Okay.
Public institution of higher education.
Okay, so then high school I don't know who they would contact at the university, but that would be up to your university may think about that. If an ISD comes to you, hopefully folks at your institution will be aware of this law, and will send it to appropriate folks. Yeah.
An institution of higher ed is not obligated to accept the request from the school district. If the institution doesn't want to be involved with college prep courses, they can say, sorry, we're not interested.
Yes.
And then the school district will just go to another public institution of higher ed.
Yes. And is it 11? Yes. Okay, just 11. So I just wanted to, some have other meetings and we'll be logging off. Thank you all very, very much. This was extremely useful. We're going to get these changes out soon. So if there's anything that you think should be in the manual, change. Not introductory information, we'll include that. We'll explain all of this. But anything in the actual items and item options where you feel like that's really confusing. Obviously we need to collect this information. So tell us, we can't do this isn't an option. But if you have something you think we've missed or is really important for us to add or change, please send any of those comments this week, and we'll, try to get the changes out next week so you have something official. I know you've had a lot of this information for the last couple of weeks, but we want you to have the very official word from Doug Parker and be able to move confidently forward with your programming. Again, thank you all very, very much, and we're all available if you have questions. We'll stay on and continue to answer what's here. So, Jenna, you want to move to the next one?
Are all high schools ISDs required to pair with a community college?
Yes, the HI requires that the school districts partner with an institution of higher ed to develop the college prep course as defined in 28.014. So we say all high schools. When we're about a school district, that means every high school within the school district. They can go ahead as part of, once they tax the institution of higher ed and as part of the agreement, if they decide where it would be, if they want to bus students or however they want to do it. And by the way, these can be also offered online, so it's not necessarily a physical location we're talking about. But yes, the high school is obligated, the school districts are obligated to create and offer these courses. They're highly recommended for students who have not yet met the college readiness standard by the end of their junior year.
And credit course, by the way, I want to make clear, because HB5 does mention the term dual credit, unless you have students who have met TSI or met readiness standards through a college prep course designed to prepare them for dual credit. You can't just say it's a dual credit course, it's a dual credit, college prep, because it's not college level. Dual credit has to be a college level course. If it's a college and a course that's in the core for funding. So I would be careful in terms of thinking about these, that you don't consider them dual credit, though there may be a situation, and this is my sense of what the intent was for that language in there based on the folks I've talked with, that if you do something like a new Mathway, you could have a college prep course, and then if the students successfully complete that and they're considered ready, that student could be moved into a college-level course, not a hybrid course that's sort of high school college. It has to be the college-level course for which you'll be transcripting college credits. So that helps too. Go ahead, Jen.
I don't know.
Oh,
question.